Hi everyone, Stefan here. So sorry I'm a few minutes late. I had to take care of some of the some technical stuff last second. I knew I was gonna be late because of course when you want to try something, better not to do it 10 minutes before the stream starts. But anyway, it's all set up now. So welcome to stream number 5. Yeah, already 5 streams, 4 under my belt. Went really fast actually. It's crazy how fast that goes. Um, and how is everyone doing tonight? I hope you guys are good. Last time I streamed was um, Saturday, I think, and we finished this guy for this future sort of little project of mine that I have, and took a bit of time, but was worth it. People people liked it. They seem to receive it pretty well, and so for today, I've done a bunch of characters, and then environment, and then eventually we'll come to vehicles at some point too, because I'm gonna need some in the game. But I think for today, so I'm gonna do what I promised last time, and this is a character, and this is this guy, and I think you probably all know who that is. It's hard not knowing, unless you've lived under a rock for the past well 40 years now. So that's obviously that's Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What's interesting about that movie? There's a bunch of things actually. When it released in '74, Toby Hooper directed it. He did a bunch of other movies, and they're all like really bizarre. He did films for Canon, which was one of the producers who did a lot of this really B movies, low budget sci-fi, and he did it really for nothing. Their initial budget was like $140,000, I think, or something. Very small budget, and it was so small that they had to shoot pretty much 7 days a week for several months. They couldn't stop even on weekends because the way it works, some film equipment is usually rented out, and so the producer pays for that, and that goes on the film budget. So obviously, the faster you go and the less time you have the equipment for, then the better. So that's why they had to really do some crazy hours. Um, so it's a really famous, probably, I think it's probably one of the very first classic slasher movie genre. Since after that, there were a bunch, and they all kind of took from this movie, whether it is the classic theme of the young students, or this, going into a spring break or something, and then the masked sort of giant killer that you can never kill. um, all that stuff really came from the girl. Also, there always one final girl surviving at the end when everyone has been decimated. So it's really interesting that there's a bunch of codes and um, tropes that are very iconic to the slasher movie, and they pretty much all came from this film. But what's interesting too is that this film is actually genuinely terrifying. I think, even though it's there's a lot of dark humor, but it's a pretty rough film. It has this gritty sort of documentary look to it, and partly was because the budget was so limited. They didn't have really good cameras or anything, and they couldn't afford too many lights, so they pretty much had to film with what they had, and so that's what partly gives this movie a sense of believability. It's very believable, even the environments when they're in the Leatherface house. There's a bunch of trophies and skeletons and all sorts of really gore things and dead animals and all sorts of stuff. And they were all true. They were all actual, real bones, real cadavers of animals and stuff like that. Apparently, the crew complained because it was in Texas. It was very hot. It was filmed in Texas, and the house stunk. It was horrible to stand there just for even for a few minutes. So it probably contributed to to some of the disgust, like the genuine disgust that you can read in the actors' faces. Um, Also, this film was it was one of the probably one of the most famous R-rated movie. There still is what we call them. I think it's MPA. I think it's motion. No, it's Motion Picture Association of America. I think, unless I'm mistaken. And those are the people who give the ratings for the movie. Deciding who is going to be able to watch this, if you need to be 18 or more, if you can go with your parents and that sort of stuff. And when they first, so you submit your movie, and the way it works is that some sort of board of censorship goes through it, and then they take notes of everything that justify their rating, and then they send this back to the producer, and then the producer, they have the opportunity to change their film according to the suggestions of the MPA to get a lower rating if they can, because obviously an R rating, which is restricted, means you can only go see the movie if you're 18 years old or more, and it's pretty much considered nowadays, at least, as a movie killer, because your audience is so limited that it mostly prevents you, takes away any chance to make a significant amount of money, at least for the big budgets. And that's why you don't see very expensive R-rated movies, because they couldn't even recoup if they had to go with an R rating. And so anyway, on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the director sent his final edit, and MPA was actually very shocked, and they sent back a bunch of things, and he almost immediately, really quickly, re-edited a version where it took off, shaved a bunch of graphic detail. The movie was supposed to be, it's interesting because people remember Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the gore and the violence and how graphic it is. But in fact, when you look back, there's very few real graphic horrifying scenes. Not a lot of gore, except maybe for that one scene when he sticks the girl on the butcher hook. This was really very, very graphic. But at the same time, you don't even see the hook getting into her body, or you don't really see any stabbing. It's more, everything is more like suggested or plain not shown at all. And so anyway, the film was originally made to be a lot more gore and graphic, and then they sent it back, and then the MPAA said no, that doesn't change anything. We're going to stay on the R rating, and finally they gave up. And when the film came out, it was banned in a number of countries. In Australia for something like 20 years. In Ireland, it was banned. I think it was banned in Germany as well. So many countries, Italy, didn't want to do anything with that movie, and they bought it from the theaters. So and in the US, an interesting thing that happens at a few theaters, they thought that they had, for some reason, they mixed up the two edits when they sent the film to different theaters, and some of the theaters actually showed the sort of re-edited version of Tobe Hooper. So it was the super graphic, super violent version of it. which is interesting. So there were actually two different movies being shown at the same time in the U.S. But I think it happened just in a couple of theaters. Um, but yeah, it's a fascinating thing. Everything that has to do with censorship, and also the other thing I want to mention is that I find quite ironic is that the film later on was praised for its clever way of not showing violence, and a lot of people actually mentioned this as one of the very sort of the most clever thing that the director did, because he was not showing, but the implied violence was a lot more disturbing than most of the graphic violence that you can see. So so it's funny because uh, what happened really is that the the film wasn't meant to be like this, and so in a way it was praised because of partly because of the MPAA requirements that forced Toby Hooper to cut a bunch of graphic violence. So it's interesting the way it worked out. So anyway, that was just a little, I guess, a bit long introduction about the film, but it's always fun to know a little bit about what you're doing, and I think I love all those stories about how the films were made and what happened and all sorts of things that are pretty cool. And I think the movie actually, very first, I think they got an X rating. So and so very few people know that actually, but the X rating, usually people when they think of X rating, they think of all the adult films, and they think that X rating means that you have to be 18 years or older for for sex or nudity. But in fact, it's not even the case. I mean, mostly that rating is used now for as some sort of implicit message that it isn't sexual, but you could get the X rating for violence as well. It's way more difficult and very rare that they ever give the X rating for a violent film. It was usually they stick to R. But if the movie had an X rating, they probably most people would have completely missed it because they would assume that it was a porn movie. They would have never gone there. So yeah, it's pretty interesting that all the stuff that happened around that. So anyway, I'm gonna start. I think without further ado. So we're gonna try and make this guy. So he's the probably the figure of the movie. If you have to name, and probably one of the most iconic killers, in the history of all movies. Really, I think, like I said, he was probably the inspiration for this slew of movies that came after, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Scream, and stuff with Hannibal Lecter, and well, all this stuff really came from even Ridley Scott, who did Alien. You'd think that this has nothing to do with Alien. Said that he was very much inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre when he went on to do Alien. So it's pretty good compliment for when you think of it. And this guy, as a result of this Leatherface, so the way they call it Leatherface because he wears this mask made out of. They never explicitly say in the film, but it's pretty clear that the mask is made out of people's faces or skin. It's pretty horrible, and in fact in the original script, like if you remember the first film, it actually at some point he has this really weird mask and people don't remember that most of the time. It's funny, but or they don't pay attention, but the mask, this is not the mask that he wears all the time. This is the mask that most people know. This is a figure, obviously, but it's a good reference. But the mask in the second part of the movie, the actor has a different outfit. He has the suit. He has a suit like a jacket. So he basically wears the same thing. the dark pants, the shirt, and the tie. The tie is interesting because after when the girl escapes and he chases after her a second time, then he dropped the apron and he replaced it with a regular suit jacket, and he has a different mask that has lipstick on and stuff like this, and so what it meant, it was kind of like there was two purposes for this according to the director. One was that he wanted to convey the idea that the Leatherface was actually wearing the faces of his victims and would sort of personify them, so almost like a split personality type of character that would inhibit the body of his different victims. And the other reason was that Toby Hooper thought that, and rightly so, I think, that adding an element of weird cross-dressing on top of that guy would make him even weirder and difficult to understand. And the more complex and the more weird a killer is, usually the more interesting he is. So that's why they're very much two very iconic versions of him. So I think I'm going to do this one because it's still the most the one that most people remember. But at the end in the game, if I ever do two outfits, because remember all the cards will be two-sided. One side will be for all the instructions regarding the NPC side, if the character you happen to meet him somewhere, and the other side will be the player side. And so if you manage to recruit that guy, comes into your party, then you flip the card over and you use the sets of instructions and skills and all that stuff that is for the because you want to play him as part of the player team. And so for this, I think I'll probably have the two different outfits. I'll have this one, and let's see, the face, Texas Chainsaw. Let's see if I can find a picture of what I'm. Yeah, see. So this is in the last scene. This is super creepy, very creepy. He runs around and chases her to the road, and then the truck passes by, and he chases after the truck, and then a second truck, like a pickup, finally picks her up and saves her. And in this scene, he has this outfit. But I wish I could find a picture in color, because in color it's very obvious that he has some lipstick on and some mascara or eye makeup that's very blue, and he has a very pale skin, which yeah, was very, very creepy. So I'll probably do two versions, this one, and then I'll do a version now which will be this one. I'm still gonna probably I'm gonna take this actually like this, or maybe we'll see it there. Let's see, what am I looking for? Copy image. Let's see, I think you can sort of see it. Let me see. You could sort of guess the makeup, eye makeup, and the lipstick, and he's got the blush on the warm sort of rosy cheeks from the blush that he's wearing. So pretty crazy that they did that, but it was pretty funny too. So we'll do this guy. I'm gonna start. So for him there's a bunch of ways we could do it. One of the quickest, if not the laziest way, I'll show you, but I think we'll try to do it in a different way. But I think for this guy, I think it would probably work. I could just take this as a base, just or maybe this one. I'll show you real quick. It won't be long. I think it's worth seeing if it's, oh shit, sorry. And use this and do this. Yeah. Okay. Let me do a real quick. I'm just gonna cut him out from the background very quickly. Obviously, it's gonna be so small. We don't have to be precise at all. It's just to get the main ball, you know, or whatever. We'll see for that. Doesn't matter. Bear with me. It won't be long, but I'd like to try it this way. Show you what I mean when I say you could probably use this image as a starting point. Quick. This. There you go. So, where is he? Here. Quick trick when you want to turn a path into a selection. One of the quick ways is just so one of the quick ways, sorry, is to if you're on PC, it's control and click on the path, or you can do on the Mac, it's command and plus C, command click, right? Hold command or hold control, click, and then you get the layer. So control J will duplicate whatever the selection is on a separate layer right on top of it. So that's pretty useful. So again, control J, boom, I have him. What I have to do now is just, we'll just get rid of this very quickly. There, and then backspace will delete whatever is in the selection. So what I can do is try and sort of shrink this guy approximately at the size he's going to be, so that he's in scale with everyone, and then proceed from there. So I just have to figure roughly what this size is, because some characters, they're a little bit taller or smaller. All fit into a 64 pixel height in a box, except for a few ones that stick out, like this guy is too big, and sometimes this is I have a box here somewhere. Sometimes if they have a weapon, or or a sword, or like this guy, the rifle will probably stick out a little bit, but I don't mind this. It doesn't really matter because I'll have enough space to print them on the card anyway. The reason why I'm trying to stick to a scale is just so that once I print all the assets, all the cards, then I want roughly all the cards to look consistent in terms of the size of the pixels, because if I was making them at different scale, if it was too visible, then what would happen is that when I put them at the same size and print them, then some of them would look more pixelated than others, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm trying to stick to a sense of scale. So for instance, we'll take this guy, pretend he's the average guy, and then I'll select him, info. Oh, sorry, I'm going to just change this real quick. your all your info. You can if you click here, you get the palette options, and then you can change the units that you want. So I'll go from inches to pixel. See, 61 pixel. So this, he is 61 pixel high from feet to top of the head. So then what I can do here is we'll take him at first. So I kind of have to gauge it more or less, because this is 61, right? But so this will be more. So if this is 61, I have to guess how high it would be with that added portion, which is about, I don't know, maybe a third. So maybe the whole thing would be, I don't know, 80, or we'll try 80 pixel just for, I'll do image, right? Image size. You want to keep it simple because obviously you want to actually create another picture with less pixels. And nearest neighbor, in order to preserve the art edges, otherwise you'll have tons of like transparency and added colors, and you don't want that. Did I do it? No. Again, image, resample. Oh yeah, so obviously you want to change the size. So we'll try 80, nearest neighbor. So this is what I get. And now I can try to just measure him to see if I was good. 60, oh look at that, 62. I was really good. 62 pixels. So pretty much this is exactly the right size. So now I can bring him over and there, you know, done. Okay, end of stream. I'm just joking. So now obviously this doesn't look very good, but you know, all things considered, it's pretty good. You look at it and you can totally read everything. It's actually a really good, you know, starting point. But here, so the problem with this is that I don't really want that pose exactly. I'd rather have a slightly different pose. And I could still keep this, you know, and just change whatever I want in the pose. But sometimes it's as long trying to change the pose of a guy that is like this by painting over than starting from scratch. And then on top of that, I have to do all the cleaning, pick all of this, change it in one color, and sometimes also what it does is that it's okay right now, it feels right, but sometimes if you keep the exact same size for everything as it is there, once Photoshop has reduced it, then the arms, they're too thin, the head is too small or whatnot, and that's because those are very realistic proportions, even though it's a figure, but the figure has pretty accurate proportions, you know, in terms of if it could be a photograph of a real person, let's say, maybe from a distance, you know. So what it does is that when you do that sort of stuff, sometimes because it's very well sort of realistic proportions, then the sprite really doesn't really fall in line with the rest. You know, it just doesn't quite fit stylistically. So it's not necessarily always a good idea to do that, but I think it's totally fine if you're a little anxious about starting from scratch, especially when you begin. I think it's fine to do this. You know, obviously, if you have to make up an entire character that has nothing to do with reality, then you'll have to start from scratch. But if you do some sort of realistic, semi-realistic character, and you can't really get the foundation, like I was mentioning, I've said this a million times, but the right proportions and, you know, balance of the character and basic colors and breakup and silhouette and all that stuff, if you can't really get that really quickly, or if you get frustrated, you can totally do this, you know, and then you go in there and you start, you know, okay, it's going to be arm, I'll take just one color, and this is going to be the arm shadow. And see, that gives you a lot of interesting ideas or information. If you guys remember, I was saying that very often I'll have the limb, like I'll show you some example of this. Where's a good example? Don't I have a good example of that? Not really. Oh no, I have one. Yeah, this one. See, what I'll do is, since the character is not facing exactly the camera, he's a little tilted. What I like to do to give it a good sense of shape and depth, I darken the limb that is away from the camera, and sometimes just the legs, sometimes just the arm. And the reason I do this is because then you assume that light comes from here, and he's sort of self-shadowing his himself, you know. So then this shoulder gets the shadow that is casted by the head, and this arm is as a shadow that is casted by the body, and this by the second leg, all that sort of stuff. And so that's a good trick to give it some depth. But actually, if you look at this guy, because it was the picture was well made, because it was to show off a figure, and then it turns out that he has a darker arm and a lighter arm, and that adds a lot in terms of your understanding of the shape of the character. Let's say if I take, remember guy, I told you how, if you want to average a color, we'll do it real quick here. Oh, sorry. So good. I have a selection, and then I go to filter. I need to make sure I'm on the right layer. Filter, and then I do a blur average. Now I have the average color for this arm, and then I can do the same here. Take this, and then Command F or Control F will reapply the last filter that you used with exactly the same parameter. So I'm on Mac, so Command F, and you see now you already have a good starting point. You have a color of your arm in light and in shadow, and it's too dark, obviously, the skin, because you know the average took a little more darker pixels, but you can always choose then a color that you like better, or reselect it, and then you can do this sort of stuff. Then you take the arm again, and you go hue saturation, and then you know, crank up lightness, saturation, and there you have your arm. Window orange. We're gonna do the trick of the other window, just another window, to make sure we see what we do zoomed in, and also a small size. Let's see. So that works. So this is something you could do. I think, however, I'm just gonna start from scratch, just because I kind of feel like I just want to have the fun to start from scratch and do something with it. I don't really want to have this same pose, and but it's good reference, so it's still good reference. And also, I really want, actually, I like that he has the chainsaw like this, you know, he's like ready to strike, but in the film it doesn't really have this attitude, though. This is more like I don't know, it feels almost like a guy who's, you know, like a fighter holding a sword or something. He looks very deliberate, very controlled, you know. He's got the nice sort of angled line from straight up from arm to blade of the chainsaw, and this is very much the kind of cool controlled pose that a fighter with a sword would have. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's hard to explain. But I think it's a little too controlled. As a matter of fact, I think this figure, for this reason, I'm not necessarily a super fan of it. Well, there's other reasons, but I think the pose is not quite working for me because of that. Even though it's pretty dynamic and he's got the tie flying in the wind and there's some cool dynamic there. But I don't know. This looks a little too kind of, you know, like fighting stance, cool fighting stance. And this looks sort of, I don't know, a little bland, you know, it's almost like they didn't know what to do with the legs. I don't know if I have another, but you know what I mean? It's not, I think it's a little unbalanced overall. I think its body too is upper body, the torso is too twisted too, compared to the it's almost like 90 degrees. It's a little much. Kind of feel like his spine is a little broken. So anyway, there's enough things in there that I'm not super fan of that it justifies to start from scratch. So here we go. Let's go. So what I'll do is just I'm gonna use this definitely as a reference because it's really good for to see all the things that I need to have, like the shirt, how the apron is made, what's on the tie, where there's blood, all these things, how he holds the chainsaw. So it's pretty good reference. So here we go. We're gonna have new layer. I'm gonna put this in characters. Let's go. There. So next to Ripley. There you go, Ripley. So first of all, this is the block out. So like I said last time, I think I mentioned this, block out will, I'm not gonna worry about getting the really nice lines. Those are very important to get right because otherwise everything looks very messy, pixelated, or undecisive. And so you really have to spend the time to find the right angles and the proper flow of pixels. But this comes later, and then I'm not even mentioning the detail, the inside detail, because this is even further away. So at this one, what matters really is just, you know, proportions, blocking in the limbs, the head. If there's a weapon or an accessory or a prop, block that in as well, and find the pose, and that's it. And doesn't matter if it's super messy or weird, as long as I get the that foundation, all the basics, then I can move on. So here we go. I think, yeah, I keep this aside, but I kind of like, what did I do with this picture? Let me see. Yeah, see, to me, copy image. I put this on top. This is at the end of the film, and he's enraged. He's pissed because she gets away. So he chases her, and then finally, after running around for 15 minutes after her, she jumps in the pickup truck and then escapes. So he's mad there. He's really furious, very angry, and he has this weird attitude about him where you feel like all his generally in the film, he doesn't look like a methodical killer or anything. He's just more like a brute, and he looks like he's very instinctive in the way he moves and everything he's doing. And so at the end, I remember this is really good scene. It's really bizarre. He kind of runs around holding the chainsaw high above his head, and he kind of like swings it in all directions in the air, really like a madman. And he screams, and it's very bizarre. It's like you can tell that he's mad, but he's not even mad in the way where he could be like throwing the chainsaw on the floor and swear or anything. He's doing this really weird motions and like a dance, and it's very creepy. And I thought that was really good for this. It was a very fit ending for that movie and for that character. So I really want to get that if I can. I would like to mix the sort of classic iconic outfit that he has here with the sort of weird, kind of crazy, outrageous pose. And granted, this is easier said than done, but I think it's worth trying, because and that's all. So I spend the time to talk about the film. I spend some time to tell you my plan, because I feel like every time you want to do some piece of art, it's a good idea to spend the time to do this. Think about, okay, what kind of pose do I want for this guy, or do I like this outfit? Should I use this one or the other? And all those things, and so that when you start, you have a goal, more or less. You have a basic objective. If you just start kind of like scribbling, you go and you're like, okay, I'm gonna make the character, whatever, and you go, okay, arms, and then okay, legs will be here. Then you're not making you don't have a pose in mind. You don't have like an attitude or anything. So I like to do this to really think about it. So I'll start with upper body. We'll take a cut off from him. Doesn't really matter at this point. And I think I'm just gonna move Montana over, because I want to keep the scale, because he's a guy. She's too small. So if I paint with her as a next to the painting, I may mess up the scale a little bit. So I'd rather have another guy. How easy this guy? Just gonna check real quick. Should be around the same, 62. Okay, so that's fine. There we go. Start with this. So to block in, I'll use a 2x2 pixel sometimes, because it's just faster. You cover more surface, and since I'm not too worried about the fine details, it kind of forces me to to go fast and put the main bulk of things first. Apron, I'm just gonna grab a color that is roughly the right color, but doesn't really matter what color it is. Can fix this later. The only thing that I will make sure that I have, and then I'll fine-tune the colors, believe me, for quite a while, but I try to make sure that I have at least the values right in terms of their relationship, because this is really important when you block out, to see, for instance, will skin show against the apron, yes, because it's lighter or something like this, So it's pretty important to have the right, somewhat the right values. And in that case, the shirt is the lightest, and then skin and apron, they're probably close, I would say. Can always do hold on, where is this guy? Yeah, can always do a quick black and white just to get a sense, of values. You see this is lighter than this. You can see it on the black and white easier than if you have the colors. And people have, unless you have a lot of experience, sometimes it's hard to dissociate value from saturation or from hue. When you look at one color, you have to break it down in hue and value and saturation, and some people, especially when you start up, it's pretty tough to realize that saturation is at that level, or the relationship of values between different things. So I think I'll probably go a little lighter for the apron. It's pretty light, I think, maybe around there. And then for shirt, like I said, I don't want to go full white because it's gonna blow up a little bit. It'll look probably a little too bright, and plus he's not the cleanest guy, so I don't want the shirt to feel too bright. I still want it to appear more like off-white because it's going to be great for the breakup and the readability, but I don't want it to be pristine. And again, we'll find this later. So when I start, I'm gonna put a more neutral background, because if I don't, it's more difficult to read things, and it's just a little tiring for me to work on a white background. It's like reading. If you read a white page, like use one of those like Kindles or things like this. If you use a white background and it's very bright, because there's like a light source inside, then it gets a little oh shit, yeah, sorry, wrong layer, sorry about that. Okay, go back here. So I think I want to go like this. So this arm will go more like this angle, and then there's a bow somewhere in there, and then it turns, and this is more like an smoother. Where's all this? Is it on the wrong way again? No. Where's that stuff? Oh, okay, fine. Layers, man. They like to confuse you. They're very useful, but damn, sometimes it's so confusing. Head. Putting the head early is good, because it will dictate a lot of the scale overall. Let's say so as you can tell, it's horrible, right? But the trick is to not mind in the beginning and just power in. You just power through it, and you don't feel, you know, discouraged if you don't get it after some time. There's a chance that it will just click at some point, but sometimes the click can take some time. So if he's going this way, I think I'll probably have, because I think I'm gonna have the chainsaw like this, and then, you know, going like this probably. So I kind of want, because there's a flow like this, and the tie goes like this, then I think I do the same for the apron. Even though, I mean, apron, it's a big thick apron. I don't imagine that it would move that much, you know, or it would be a little bit stuck on his body, I assume, you know. But it's just sometimes it's still cool to have a little bit of motion and stuff like this in cloth, a little more than it would be in reality, just because it looks cool and dynamic, you know. So even if it's if you have to cheat a little bit, it's okay. I would love for the head to look like, but that's going to be very difficult. I don't know if I can pull that out, but I would like for the head to look like he's you know, looking up, like crazy, you know, looking at the sky, and because he's yelling a lot, he's doing this sort of weird coyote owl, you know, and so that would definitely convey more of a crazy guy if his head could be tilted up, but it's very difficult to do this at this side on Pixel. The reason is why, because the fact that you read a head looking up or down, it's because the perspective in the facial features, right? You see more of the chin, the under chin, and then, you know, you see less of the eye, and you see under the nose and all that sort of stuff. So that's how you read if someone is, you know, looks up, among other things. But this is very important. So it's hard to get this in at such a small size. One of the things you can do is so just more hair down and a little less at the top, so that, but still it's going to be difficult, but we'll see. How's everyone doing tonight? Hope you guys had a good weekend. I was really looking forward to this stream, actually. I was telling my wife, I can't believe how much I enjoy doing that stuff. It's really fun. It's really a lot of fun. Oh, also something I wanted to say. A couple of people, they wrote to me either on here. They whispered to me on Twitch, or some sent me a message or on Reddit or whatnot, and I got a couple that were very very nice. I was very very happy with them. Very emotional. Because basically, people said in substance that they liked the fact that I was speaking about not just showing the art, but also, sharing a lot of the sort of thoughts and process and how I think and all that stuff, and that it inspired them to try and do the same thing. And I thought that was very, to me, that was very rewarding because I still don't know the it's so early and the stream is so new that I don't really know what you guys think. So I'm very much in a kind of like, it's very much like an experience where I'm like in a box, and I'm not allowed, people can look in, like a prison cell. People that can look in, not that this is a prison, but not the best analogy, but people can see me from the outside, but I'm not allowed to see them. So I don't really know what they think, or even if they're there. So it's a weird, it's actually an interesting feeling. I would have never imagined this because I don't look at, I consciously don't look at the viewer count. Since I started, I don't look at it. I look after. They have those, how they call that, post stream views, and I look at them after to just, to see if there was someone, and to see if hide if the stream is getting bigger or whatnot. But on the when I stream, I don't look at it, and the reason is I want to assume there's always going to be someone, because if there's not, and then I don't speak, then I'm afraid some people could, get find the stream, turn it on, and then all they see is the cursor moving. Sometimes I explain something, and I'm still for a little while. So if I was not talking, I think people would wonder what's going on. So I try to keep a little bit of something going on, and also I don't want to look, because if for some reason there was a lot more people than I expect, I'm afraid that I would froze, because it would be too self-conscious, and I would be terrified of messing up. It's like, oh, I can't get this character, and now everyone looks at it, and I suck in front of the planet. So I think it's better not to look at the viewer count. Definitely, I look at the chat though, so I'll try not to miss the chat if I can. But anyway, yeah, thank you. If you're here, let me. I can't look, but I don't know if you guys. You probably know who you are. The few people I mentioned that sent some really encouraging messages. But if you recognize yourself in this, then I want to thank you personally, because it really, this sort of little message really makes my day, because it's not about like success, or being cool, or getting money or anything. It's just about knowing that some people, they maybe you help them a little bit, or even if you didn't help them, if you inspire them to do something. I think to me it's very rewarding, because I don't want pixel art to go away. I want pixel art to thrive and prosper and be I want everyone to do that stuff, so that we see more and more incredible art. So if someone tells me that they're going to try because of me, you know, or partly because of me, then to me this is a big deal. I'm really happy about it. Yeah, and even if I'm not gonna look at the names on the chat because I don't want to look at who's there. But I wouldn't call out anyone, by the way, probably because I don't know. Maybe some of you guys, I think, even if you've sent some messages, maybe you just want to lurk. You don't want to be bothered or called out. I think I'm pretty shy myself, and I hate when I'm this, you know, the center of attention, whether it was at school or at work. When people call me out, even if it's, you know, for the right reasons, you know, they'll call me out to, you know, say something nice or talk about me in front of other people. I generally don't like it. I feel very uncomfortable. So I assume some of you guys could be like this and wouldn't like to be called out, even for to be thanked. Let's see. I turn. I swapped it just because I want to see. Like it's more like dancing, to be fair. But hey, so the one thing that I think really needs to be conveyed, it's gonna be difficult, but it's the fact that this guy he's a big guy, you know. He's almost fat, you know. So I don't want him to look like he's long and lanky. He needs to be pretty big and stocky and have sort of short legs. Is there anything else in the that we need? Oh, the little maybe this would help a little bit. Just we'll see about that. Doesn't really matter. I always have the hardest time with legs. I feel like legs, they're difficult to pose. It's hard to say why, but legs, most of the time they kind of, it's an afterthought, you know. You're like, at least for me, I focus a lot on the upper body. You know, I look at it and I'm like, okay, cool, arm, and then is it dynamic and all that stuff. And then I go and start the legs, and I'm like, okay, boom, boom, done. You know, or legs spread apart, done. But I think this is a mistake that I make very often. See, this guy, for instance, I struggled quite a bit with him. You know, to be perfectly honest, it took me a while, and I like him overall. I think, you know, we can tell who he is, and I like the rendering of the metal, and I like the upper body, but I'm not a huge fan of the legs. I think one leg is okay, but they're too symmetrical, and I try to have one in shadow for this reason, but still I feel like they're a little too symmetrical and a bit boring, you know. They're a bit boring. So I think this I will probably come back at some point, but you know, I can't do that for now. And that's the other thing. Something I wanted to mention is this is so tempting. You'll see. I've seen so many artists doing this. I do it myself. So tempting to go back. You know, you've done something, especially during a project, a long project, or you know, like a project that lasts for a long time, sometimes months or years. As you make and you create something, let's say if you're making a game, like for this, you know, my plan is to have 120 characters. You know, I don't know if I'll ever make that, but anyway, I wanted to have 140 because I want a ton of different combination of teams and characters that you can choose. I thought to myself one time. The basic idea was like, in games there's always you know, the NPCs, and then most of the role-playing games, they work either in two ways: or you draw, or you create a party from scratch with, you know, predetermined classes, and you kind of roll those things. You know, you roll, okay, I'm going to roll a warrior, and then I'm going to roll a wizard, and then I'm going to roll this, and then you name them and all that stuff. And then there are NPCs. And the other classic way of doing it is you start with one character, and then you ask some people that you meet, NPCs, to join you, and they can join you. But generally, you can't recruit anyone. You know, there's a ton of NPCs, even in the crazy Skyrim games or Bethesda games. There's only a few selected people that you can actually have on your team. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be that cool to have just no difference basically between an NPC and a player? You can actually, every time you meet someone in that game, well, there's a chance that he's going to be part of the team if you're good enough to convince him, or if you have the right thing in your possession or whatnot. You know, wouldn't that be cool? I thought that would be really cool. I've always wanted to do something like this along those lines. So I figured, you know, and on top of that, if they're all like kind of iconic, famous characters, then that's even better. You know, no one's ever boring. They're all cool, you know, and not to say that they all have the same. They're all very useful in every situation. Sometimes you may think that you don't want to have this guy in your team, especially if in his case he's a cannibal and he eats everyone else. Then probably you don't want him to, you know, to join you. But maybe there are cases where you want him. So there's basically never a boring NPC. They're all cool, and they can all be. So for replayability also, that would be really nice. So anyway, so I wanted to have 120 characters or so. My point was, it was again a huge. I get just distracted and talk, and I go on a tangent. I'm very sorry about that. I do that all the time. Call me out for it, guys, if I don't finish a point. My point was that I want to do 120 characters. Maybe I'll have a different picture from each side, and that means 240 guys. That's a lot of work. And there's a good chance that by the time I reach the end of the characters, I will have improved, right? I'll be more efficient, and I will learn things in the meantime. And so there's a very significant chance that the first characters that I made won't be at the same sort of level of the latest one. So what do you do in a case like this, you know? Well, I think most people, they go back to the first one, and then bring everything to, you know, what they think is the standard. And that's fine. But then what happens is you do that, and then you progress doing it. And so, of course, you make a couple, and then 3 and 4, and then when you reach the 10th or the 20th, then even the last characters that you made, when you decided for the first time to go back, they're not as good. And so, and you keep doing this, and it's endless, and you just go crazy. At least for me, this is what would happen. So I think it's what I've decided, because it's something that tortured me for years. Should I always go back? I used to just reopen files months and years after the fact, you know, crazy. But it doesn't make sense, because it's always going to be there's always going to be a way of doing something better and progressing. And so the way I've figured I would do it is I would only go back if there is clearly a major flaw, something that is really not good. You know, if a character is okay, but he's not as cool as the latest that I've done, then I won't go back. I'll go back only if there's, you know, a major thing that really bothers me. But if it's just a few things, and and then I can tell that okay, he's not as good as the other one, but he's not terrible, then I'll let it go. And also, I think you have to remember, I think it's really important to, and this is the biggest challenge of being an artist, is to be able to judge your own work. And because you know it by heart, there's a chance that you're so critical of it that for you, let's say this character will suck compared to I don't know, like this guy, because I made this guy later or whatnot. But I think it's because I'm so familiar with the thing, the work, and what I've done. And most people that is going to be sort of the audience, they're not gonna feel the same way, you know. They'll be like, no, it's fine, you're good. I mean, yeah, it's okay, you know. Or they'll say, I prefer the ones that you don't like. So it's not really a guarantee that you have a very good judgment on your own work. At least for me, it's definitely not a guarantee. So I have to be mindful of that. One thing that is good for this is to show this stuff to someone you really trust the judgment of, someone that you know is a good artist, or is generally someone that has a good taste, you know, that you share the taste with that person, you agree with the things they do, you think they're, you know, they have a good eye or whatnot, and then you ask them, and if they tell you, yeah, this guy definitely sucks, I mean, it doesn't even look like the same person made those two things, then yeah, you probably want to listen to that. I have to find a way of making this sort of this character a little more kind of crazy, you know. And I may not succeed entirely, but I want to try and kind of get some of this. Oh, sorry. You see, I'm so bad with the chat. Esteban, just wanted to say thank you for your lovely reply. Oh yeah, okay. Anastasia couldn't quite find the words you to write, but you must say thanks for being so encouraging and inspiring. It's nice to come across someone so open and genuine. It's funny. Someone's word, really, you're awesome. Wow, thank you very much. I appreciate this immensely. You can't imagine how this is this matters to me. I'm very glad if you got a little bit something out of this, even if it's just a little bit of inspiration or just, you know, just some encouragement. Then I'm very happy for you, and you're more than welcome. More than welcome. I mean, everyone, you know, has been. Remember when I started? I wish I had. There was no internet when I started making my games. You know, no internet. So we were so isolated. I remember it was crazy. When I started coding for the C64, at the time I was it was all assembly language, because you know, C++ and all the object-oriented language, they existed, but they were not commonly used in game development, because the computers were so slow that C and, you know, all these languages in Fortran or Pascal or whatever, they were all used for databases or, you know, professional software that didn't require a lot of computing speed or GPU, what we call GPU power now. You know, displaying lots of stuff at the same time on the screen and still playing at 60 FPS. That sort of stuff, to do it, you really had to do it in assembly. and it's a pretty abstract language. It's not that it's really difficult, but it's very abstract, at least in the beginning. And then I started. I just wanted to make a game, you know. And there was no other way. You just had to program everything in assembly, and then you had to program your own tools as well because there was no tools. So in order to create my, I had to code a level editor and even a software to do music because there was no software that on the C64 that could actually, where you could produce music with it with the internal chip. So I had to make my sort of version of a MIDI software. It was crazy. It was a lot of work. And then I remember there was no internet, there was nothing. And then I was in France still, and my friend, my good friend, best friend, we were working on this together, and we had no idea. It was like, okay, well, now we have the computer, we have the manual for the computer, and that's all we have. There's nothing else. And there was a manual for the basic, because the basic language was basic, and it was by default included in the system. But that was it. And so we had to find books, and of course all books they were that dealt with programmation and stuff. They were all books for engineers, and they talked about how to make a boolean, or how to store things in the memory, how to create a table, and a dynamic table in memory and index it or whatever. And we couldn't be more bored by that stuff. We had no idea. It was like, what the hell is this for? It doesn't say anything. We want to display a motorbike, and make cool sounds. We don't want to create a freaking database. And so, but there was nothing else. So we had to go through this and learn the software and the programming language through books that were destined to do anything but what we wanted to do. So that was pretty interesting. But the good stuff, I have really fond memories of that time because it felt like it's such an adventure, because there was nothing that no one could help us, and so we felt like we felt on our own, and it's sort of a stranger in a strange land, and we had to figure it out and by ourselves, and every little step was like a huge victory, like we conquered a new frontier or something. I remember when I managed to be able to display my very first sprite on screen. I was ecstatic. I was showing my mom. I was like, "Can you see this?" And she was like, "Yeah. What is this?" And I was like, "Can you see that? What it is?" She was like, "Not really." And I was like, "Well, it's a bike. It's clear. Can't you see the bike?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, right. I see the wheels. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's good, honey." And that was it. And I was like, "You don't even this took me hundreds of hours to get to this point. Don't you understand?" And but like all parents were, she was like, "Okay, well, I go back to school and we'll talk about that." But yeah, we had a lot of fun doing that stuff, and I'm so glad to see all those indie games now coming back in full force, and all this incredible work that people put out. It's really it's very encouraging, and I think we've rarely been in a better times for game developers, really. I think there's been ever a better time. I think it'll keep being better and better, probably. Maybe I should twist this body a bit so we see a bit of the side. to find a way to make this a little more wild. It's tricky. Maybe. I can tell you that when, even though it was very gratifying to find most of the stuff by ourselves, there are times where I got so discouraged, and I thought I would never ever make a game in my life. It was so difficult. Um, Stuff that we stayed in an impasse for days and weeks, not understanding what was bugged and why we couldn't do things, or why it was so slow, and that could be. And at the same time, we saw all those games. We were trying to get. I mean, I didn't have that much money that I could have all the games, but we tried, and frankly, we hacked them a little bit. But anyway, you shouldn't do that. But anyway, at the time, it was for science. We had to do a little bit of a hacking of the games, just because we couldn't buy everything, and we needed them to study them. It was all for science. And so we saw those games, and we were like, wow, it's like, how is that? It's impossible. I can. We had like two sprites on screen, and the frame rate tanked, and then it was like these guys, they had like 12 on screen, and they had like a raster with more colors in the sky, like a gradient made with a raster. I'll explain that at some point, how they did that. And we're like, well, there's not that even, you can't even go more than 16 colors or 4. How do they display all those colors? And the plus, it's 60 frames per second, and they have like 4 times as stuff on screen. And it was like, we had no idea. It seemed like those people, they had access to some kind of voodoo magic that we didn't possess, and so eventually we started to look into their code, but because it was all assembly and it was compiled code from directly from the game that was sold, then we couldn't data mine like they do now, because now if you decompile, you can find some areas where there's still like comments, because when you're doing code, you can add comments and stuff in the code, so you can actually find some stuff that's written in plain English, here displaying this, or here launch music, or here this and that. But when we decompiled sort of all the stuff, it was all hexadecimal. So if you know what hexadecimal is, it's basically all numbers from 0 to 9, and letters from A to F. That's it. That was the only thing. It was all that, just a bunch of pages after page of hexadecimal, and we had to figure what that meant. And can you imagine this? It was crazy. But I guess with patience, you always end up, finding a way. But yeah, if I had at that time when I was 15, or if I had like someone like one of those game developers, like the real ones, coming to my house and giving me a few tricks, I would have been really happy about that. Sometimes I felt like I was never gonna get anything done. Oh, I want to show you guys. So I'm gonna do something fun. I had some time a little bit yesterday, so I was scribbling and I started one too. So and I figured, oh, I'm gonna save it because maybe tomorrow I'll suck and I'll have a better one. So I'll just keep this one. And so I'm curious to see it now. See, I didn't properly didn't even know if the size was wrong or good, but I did it real quick and just want to compare. I kind of like this a bit better in terms of like how kind of, and the legs too, it looks a little bit more crazy. um it's not, it's not great, but it's a little bit, it's interesting. There's something in there. Now I have to figure what makes it different. I kind of like those legs. I wonder if I mean, let me just grab them. As you can tell here, it's a lot of stuff done a little bit like without too much thought. Lots of instinctive sort of drawing, just trying to get something cool, almost trying to get an accident to happen. I think this is very important, by the way. Seriously, the idea that when you, for those of you who do something creative, whether it is painting or music or anything really, yeah, right, yeah, I agree, there's more movement in the other one. So you think so? Yeah, yeah, I think so too. Yeah, so maybe I ought to start from here. I don't know, what do you think? Maybe, I mean, let me just make it a little brighter so we can I think also, what happens is, especially when you look at the version on the white background, I think what happens is um, there's all those little weird pixels everywhere, and they kind of give you this sort of like torn, torn edges of cloth, and almost like there's been an impact and there's some stuff flying. I mean, generally little things like this, the chaos makes things look a little more dynamic. So maybe it's also part of this. I think that we sort of subconsciously read. Um, and also, oh, see, I think what happens. I think I know what's going on too. This, you see how straight this is compared to here. I feel the neck, and I feel like it's almost like his head was like, you know backwards, and so you it almost like occludes part of his neck, because he's kind of looking up and back, and is from the side. His head is there, and his body is here. He's pushing his head back like this. So then here you see a little less of neck. I think it's part of that too. Yeah, see, I think this works better as a yeah. I think it works a little better because of that. And also there's an angle to it. So maybe I ought to do this as well. So you see, I think it's you see how. Well, I don't mind that actually going above the leg like this. It's pretty. See, I like this. The fact that it looks like the apron is kind of stuck on this leg. He propped this knee up, and so there would be foreshortening of that thigh, right? And because that leg is propped up, then the apron is kind of wrapped around it, you know, and this leg would be more recessed, would be more like back, and so there would be some space here for the apron to kind of float, you know. I don't know if that makes sense. Oh shit. Oh man, see the notes? Well, the good thing is I think I saved not too long ago. We'll know soon enough. The notes make my Photoshop crash. I don't get it. Why the notes? What kind of evil did the engineers put in this? Wow, thank you, Recover. Holy crap. That has to be the first time that Recover ever works for me. Well, boys, we're lucky. Saved often, right? You all know that. And back up everything several times in multiple places. Put them in a safe. Send them to your mother who lives elsewhere. You know. Hey, I have a fun story about the crazy people who or artists, Jesus, who can never let go of their art. This is a true story. One of my favorite painters, fantasy painters and illustrators. He was an illustrator. Is Frank Frazetta. So probably a lot of you guys, if you like art and if you like fantasy and all that stuff, you probably know of this guy, Frank Frazetta. He was born I think probably early 20th century, 1920 something, and then he was a painter and illustrator. Started doing comic books in the beginning, and then he moved on to doing covers with oil paintings for comic books, and then for books, and then for all sorts of things. And when he went into his career, it took a turn really for the better in the 60s when what was that? Oh yeah, thanks. Like half an hour later, yeah, we noticed that. Um, and anyway, so Frazetta, he became very successful in the 60s, around 1964, because he was doing all those super awesome book covers, most notably stuff that he did for Conan. Everyone, I think, in one way or another, when they think of Conan, they may not know it, but they think of Frazetta. Let me see. And because of this picture, if you guys don't want me to talk about all that stuff and just focus on the painting, let me know. Don't hesitate to let me know. I just like to talk about a bunch of stuff, you know. It's cool. And I like to try and have people know about the artists that I like, because I feel like they deserve it. So anyway, yeah, Imagine a New Time, maybe. Yeah, that is probably the most famous cover and generally representation of Conan, the character, by far, I think. And then, yeah, right. I mean, yeah, yeah. All the pictures that you know of Conan that are cool and super dynamic and crazy and violent, and they were Frazetta. This guy, he was really an icon, and he really turned completely on its head the business of fantasy illustration in the 60s, because you have to remember in that time, um, this is um, this is what science fiction looked like. There, that's your average, that's your average book cover. The spaceship, the saucers, and the funky robot. It's a great movie, by the way, Forbidden Planet, but looks a little dated, right? I mean, you look at that stuff, it's like, okay, it's fun, to look at, but it was that there was nothing else. So then comes in Rosetta. I'll try to find another. So Tarzan, same thing, So find something. Find a good one. Tarzan 60s illustration. Of course, it's going to be all Frazetta, but because the other ones, they're gone. No one remembers their name. Yeah. Okay. That's more or less the typical illustration at that time, right? That was more or less the way Tarzan was represented. So he's nice, and he's kind of rests on his little branch, and he looks a little thoughtful, right? Okay, so now comes Frazetta about the same time, and he does stuff like this, and people are like, what the hell happened? All of a sudden you got this super awesome, bloody, brutal, primal illustration with those beautiful colors and really strong composition, and even anatomy and all that stuff. And people, they couldn't believe it when they saw, and so very quickly it took over the entire illustration market in the 60s, in the US. Everyone wanted a cover from Frazetta because he basically changed the game. None of what you saw was relevant then. It was crazy. He's a bit like, it's like you think of Alien, the movie, and then you think of what was in science fiction before that. It was a massive change, massive impact. So anyway, Frazetta was this guy, and but he had a little issue. He was very perfectionist, very, very, very proud of his work, and he really wanted things to be done properly. And so once in a while, he took a picture, that he thought was not that great, and then he went back to it, So you'd think, well, that's his art. He's allowed to do this, fine, sure. But then he kept doing this, even when his art became world famous. So illustrations that people knew by heart, they were like icons. They were famous paintings. They were, at that point, they were not illustrations anymore. They were considered like classic paintings. He would still change them, and his publishers and everyone and his agent, they freaked out. They were like, "You can't do this. This is crazy. This stuff is everywhere. They know you. You can't change the picture now. It's a classic. It's almost like it didn't belong to him anymore because it was so famous. It would be like um, uh, um, Leonardo da Vinci going back and taking Mona Lisa, and changing it. Uh, it's inconceivable. And so it was so crazy that even when he was very old, and then he had a stroke. When he was very old, he had a stroke, and he got paralyzed. Poor guy. From his whole right hand side of his body was paralyzed. So he was right-handed, so he couldn't paint anymore. Well, he taught himself to paint and draw left-handed for a few years. And then he went into commercial illustration and he kept doing covers, awesome ones, left-handed. And then even at that point, he wanted to change stuff from pictures that were 30 years old. So what he would do, and at that point he had in his house, they had set up a museum, and he had this big mansion, I remember, I don't know which state it was, northeast U.S., Maine or something like this. And then he had this big mansion, and he had a museum where people could go and see all those classic paintings. And then at night he would wake up. He was like, I'm talking about a guy who was like 70 plus. He would wake up at night, sneak into the museum, take a picture, and then work on it. And his wife, she freaked out. She was like, are you insane? You can't do this. You have to stop doing this. And he was like, well, this is my art. I'll do whatever I want with it. And so it became such a problem. His agent were, like people, like galleries, they would call him and they would say, we want to display this and this. And then his agent would be like, well, he changed it, so it's not exactly, it was crazy. And so at some point his wife, she decided that it was enough. So she put some locks onto the museum, and then and she was the only one with the key, so he couldn't go in and change the art. That's how crazy he was, that they had to lock him out of his own museum. So that was Frazetta. So I think it's a good lesson, it's a good story to remember that maybe sometimes you have to let go. Yeah, I love this story. Crazy guy, crazy guy. Some people hated him because he was very obnoxious. He was such an incredible artist and he knew it, and he wouldn't mince his words or with agents or publishers or anyone. He didn't care at all. He was crazy. He was a barbarian, and people they were so scared of him. um, Students would come at his house and try and see him, and they would show him the art that they did, inspired by him. They would be like, I want to be you one day. Look at this. I did this and this. What do you think? And he would go, well, if you want to be a bad Frazetta, you can be a bad Frazetta all your life. It's fine. But you should be a good yourself. And he would destroy them. He didn't even care. People that loved him. But he was true to himself. So I respect that quite a bit. I think honesty and is a big component of a good artist. Not that you have to be a dick about it, but he was a little bit of a dick. There's another really cool story that I like a lot. One of his best friends. I think it's starting to look interesting. What do you think, guys? I think this is okay. No, it's not the crazy. Do we feel the crazy? I think so. I mean, yeah, I think it's not too bad. I think. Yeah, I think at this point, I think you can get rid of that. Just focus on that. Yeah, that's all right. I think we'll just keep this, and then it'll probably evolve still. But I think I'm gonna mess up his pants and in the apron a bit, even though technically he's not like this. I mean, the pants are not torn or anything, even in the film. And the apron is very clean. There's no weathering or tearing. But again, it's one of those cases where what I want to convey matters more than the exact, truth of what the character is and how he's dressed up. I think as long as people recognize him, I can probably take a few liberties with the outfit, because if it reinforces what I want, as this guy is crazy and I mean it's a family of cannibal rednecks, and everything is dirty in their house and it's all broken. So I mean it kind of goes with the character anyway. So I feel like it's probably okay to do a little bit of that. Remember Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street? Same thing. He had but he was like that though. He had the torn edges on the sweater, and that was really nice for him. It looked really cool. So I did a little bit of that, few pixels here and there to just convey this. And I think I can do just a bit of that here too. Maybe not as much, but just to make it a little wilder. Oh, I was about to tell you guys another story about Frazetta. This one is really touching, actually. So one of his friends, he had a really really good friend, one of his best friends. And the thing you have to know about Frazetta too is that he never wanted to be an artist. He didn't care at all. It's even more offensive for us artists who struggle. He didn't care. He wanted to be a pro baseball player. That was his dream. He wanted to play with the New York Yankees. That was his only dream. He had baseball stuff since he was a kid. His father would bring him to see the Yankees play, and that was his thing. It was like he was dead certain that he would become a professional baseball player and that he would play with the Yankees. But of course, playing pro is pretty difficult. And at some point, he got injured. He was pretty good, but he got injured, and so he had to stop playing baseball. And then he became, he started. He always liked drawing, but he never thought it would become his job. So anyway, anytime he could, he would play ball because he just loved it. So he had a bunch of friends, and he went with them and he played baseball with them, a bit like Stephen King is doing in his little town. He has his group of friends, and they play baseball on the weekend. And so Frazetta was doing that on a regular basis. And then he had this very very good friend. He was also an illustrator, and the name escapes now. I've tried to find it the last 10 minutes while I'm talking, but I can't place him. I can't find the name. It's crazy. I'll come back. But anyway, it was his best friend, and this guy was also an artist, and they would they would send work to each other once in a while. You know, when one guy was too busy to take the commission, he would give it to the other, and they shared a lot of things. And they shared their work, and they critiqued each other and all that sort of stuff. And then his friend got sick, and then he had only a few weeks, a few months to live. He was very, very sick, and one day he talked. He was speaking with Frank Frazetta's wife, and he told her, you know, there's something I've always wanted to tell you, and I can't tell him because I think he would be, maybe he would be hurt. And she was like, okay, so what is this? And he said, well, I love Frank, but I resent him a lot. I've always hated him for that because he's such a talented artist that I'll never be. And he said, I would look at Frank's work. I would slave on a cover for Tarzan for weeks, and it would be stiff and unoriginal and bland, and then Frank would storm in, take a piece of cardboard, and paint this masterful thing in a couple of hours because he was in a rush to go play ball again. And how can you compete with that? And that really made an impression on me. And this poor guy, his whole life, he struggled. He tried to be like his friend, as good as him, and he knew from the start that there was no way he could ever become that good, because the other guy, he was just a natural. He didn't even care. It just came easily for him, and he had to wait until he was pretty much almost dead to finally, admit this to his wife. He couldn't even tell it to Frazetta himself. It's a pretty amazing story, and I can totally see that. If you're an artist yourself, or if you're doing anything creative, even if you're doing sports or whatever, and you want to be really good at it, and then you see people that they're naturals, it can be very frustrating. You don't understand. You're like, why them? Why do they get to be that good and not me? They haven't deserved it. They don't work for it. Because Frazetta, he was working a lot, but it didn't matter. He was always good anyway, and so it didn't really matter. It was not really because he worked more than most illustrators that he was better. He was just better from the start, and the work just made it even worse, and the difference even more obvious. Kind of want to have like the beefy forearms, a bit fat. Like this. Then I need to see what's going on there. Oh, of course, the thigh will be hidden on every single picture. Yeah, of course. Let me find this. As you can tell, I very often wear a tie, so often that I can't even tell how it looks. Where are you, Leatherface? Show me your tie. It's actually quite short. It's funny. So I need to suggest probably the shirt color, and the tie going around the neck, maybe, if I can. Yeah. I mean, it's just. I mean, there's a knot and goes around. It's not really. I guess there's not much to see there anyway. But see, even stuff like that, I'll look for a reference. I don't care. even if it seems obvious. I'll just look for a reference, because sometimes you can, I don't know, you can find stuff that you by accident that you didn't really think of. Which brings me back to the accent question. That's also something that I started and I didn't finish. I kind of like this. Copy. Can I get a bigger picture? Yeah. So yeah, if you're an artist, or if you create things in general, it doesn't have to be, you know, painting, but generally you start with an idea in mind, and you're making something that you've planned out, and you know, you're trying to follow that if you can, and then okay, so just do this real quick. So you do your thing, you know. Yeah, I like that. You do your thing, you do your art, and or you're in front of your keyboard and you try to find some music or something. And then you have this idea in mind. I'll talk about painting because for me it's easier to relate to. And you're in front of the screen and you're kind of scribbling, and you're like, okay, this is, you know, I'm gonna set up a perspective grid, I'm gonna start my environment, and you know, you work like that, you know, you do your thing, and then you know what you want to do. You have a pretty good idea. Like, I'm gonna paint a mountain range, and here there's gonna be some kind of city, and there's gonna be a spaceship, you know, coming down, and all of that, and a bunch of guys will sit on that wall and they look at it and all that stuff. And then you do your thing, and at some point, you're kind of struggling. I mean, it's cool, but it's not great. And at some point, you just, you know, you copy paste something in the middle of a picture, like by accident, like a reference, or something else, or you're painting. See, this is good to convey a little. Sometimes it's all it takes to convey the actual curve of the sleeve. So it's always a good trick. And so you do something, and then an accident happens. You know, you mess up something, or you put a line in there, or a brush stroke, and it kind of messes up something. But then you see in there something appears that you're like, oh, that's interesting. Well, I think this sort of stuff at any moment can happen, generally happens. And I think, to me, it's very important to be looking for those moments, to be able to recognize them, and to take the opportunity, even if it goes against your plan. And by that I mean, maybe you'll be like, oh, you know, I did this, and then it looks like this, you know, the city is half destroyed, and then there's this, and this mountain that I drew looks like, you know, another city in the distance or whatnot. And you're like, well, I was not planning to make a second one in the distance or whatnot. But then why not? You know, if it's for you, and if something really cool happens, then you can take it. You know, it's yours. You don't have to follow the plan regardless of what happens, because I think accidents and the ability to recognize quality in something or an idea, it's something that's really important for an artist. And you don't want to be too attached to anything in a picture. I always consider everything expendable in a picture, or anything I do. At any point in time, I can decide that it sucks. I'll take this and I'll start from scratch. But I like the legs, you know, not in that case, but I could. Um, there's never something that's too good to be thrown away, or that I spend too much time on to be thrown away, especially when it's about time. It can never be. It should never be. In my opinion, it should never be your reason for doing things. You know, I spend a lot of time on it. I want to show it. So, and it needs to stay in the picture. Well, it ruins the composition and the focal point, but I'll keep it because I spent 20 hours on it. Well, wrong. You know, I think in that case, well, it sucks, you know, that you spend that much time on it, but it'll suck even more if the picture suffers because no one will ever know how much time you spend anyway, and they will never know that you could have done something a lot better. So, and it's personal. I think some people they're very good at having a plan and sticking to it. I'm not that great, to be honest. I'm a little more instinctive, and in it's not rare that I do something and realize, ugh, it didn't turn out the way I wanted. But in fact, this is better. I kind of like it, and well, it was not the plan, but I'll just do it anyway. You know, obviously, what I'm talking about here is more for, you know, personal art. If you're doing production art and, you know, someone tells you there's a city and then, you know, you add a second city in the background, it's not in the story, then I'm not going to be too happy about that. But there's all sorts of accidents. Sometimes it's just a brush stroke or something, some interesting shape that you can use, or a combination of colors. You mess up a little bit the colors, and all of a sudden, like, there's this accent of color that appears, or it looks like the lighting is different, and then you're like, oh wow, actually, it would be a better lighting maybe. Then you need to pursue that, you know. And if you're not sure, I think you should still pursue it. Not leave, try not to leave too many stones unturned, you know, with reason, you know, with reason. You don't want to, to spend all your time redoing what you've done. But I think it's worth sometimes to spend a little bit of time. And even if you end up thinking, well, in fact, didn't quite work. See, I like this thing, but it's not a great shape. So I wonder if I should sacrifice this and then just focus on, you know, the flow. Maybe I should. Maybe I should. Yeah, I think I should do that. This doesn't really work. What do you guys think? I think it's better to let it flow. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Maybe here we'll have the little, you know, little belt or whatever this is called. Sorry for my English. Very often I don't use the right word. I love words and I love languages and I love to read and write. So it frustrates me to no end that I can't express myself in properly, you know. I think there's so many words that are the right word for a sentence or an idea, and sometimes I don't have the word. I have some sort of generic word that everyone uses, but then I know that there's a better one, and I know it in French, but I can't find it in English, and I think it's it's frustrating. Okay. Just gonna quickly put some indication of shoes just to get an idea of feet versus shoes. Sometimes I like to do this early. It doesn't really matter, but it's just, to me, it helps me a little bit. Yeah. Here we'll do this. I think his shirt was pretty, yeah, just not too close to the body. They made it quite close to the body, but when you look at him, it's pretty loose. I wonder if I should make it a little more loose. Yeah. Maybe a bit shorter. I think in terms of block out, I think I'm not too far. No, I think it looks a bit small because the head is kind of tucked in the body. I think maybe I need to just I'll try this real quick just to make him a little more in line in terms of size. Let's see. See this compared to, oh no, that. This, that. Yeah, I think it's better. The torso was a little short anyway. That's probably fine. And he's a little shorter, but that makes sense because he's kind of his legs there are a little bit bent, you know. He's in motion, so he's probably leaning forward and bending his legs. So I think it seems like it makes sense that he's just a bit shorter. Yeah, I think that's fine. What else can I talk about? Well, actually, I have a good story about censorship. I was telling you that the MPAA, you know, they give suggestions to directors that tell them, well, we're going to give you an R rating, but if you want to avoid this, then we suggest that you don't show this butt, or you can't decapitate that character on screen or stuff like this. And then the director is free to decide what he wants to do. Actually, the producer would be involved. And most of the time, as you can imagine, directors hate that because it's pretty much, it's telling them how they need to make their movie, and very few people like to be told, especially directors, how they should make their movie. But it's the reality of the market that your rating holds considerable power over the success of your movie, and they know that, so they have to follow at least a little bit of their recommendations from the MPA. And I was saying, in the case of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it probably helped them because the fact that it was less graphic was actually something that was praised by critics who thought that it was deliberate and smart, when it wasn't really the case. How do you hold this stuff? I've never held a chainsaw. So I imagine there's like a handle in the back and maybe one on the side of, oh yeah, there you go. So one on the back and one on top. So this could be this one, and this one could be sort of over there somewhere. I guess something like that. I think, yeah, okay. And then maybe there would be a little more space. Oh, actually that makes him, yeah, that's better actually. It's a little more wild with the arms more spread apart. I like that. Oh, see, that was here's an accident. They don't plan to move his arm, but actually that's a good one. So I'll take it. But yeah, so the censorship. There is a film you guys probably know, RoboCop, not the new one, not the remake, but the original one. Paul Verhoeven movie. He's a Dutch director, came from the Netherlands, and he actually made a bunch of really crazy movies in the Netherlands before he came to the US, and really cool movies, very gritty, very realistic and giving, but very good movies. And I'm just gonna suggest a little bit of shading now because I feel like I can't really find much stuff to do now in terms of the overall silhouette, and I think I'm okay now, so I think I'm gonna start doing things a little, I'm gonna put the humph in it now, all the little detail and stuff. So Paul Verhoeven, he did a lot of really cool movies. He did in the US too. He did RoboCop and Starship Troopers, Basic Instinct, Total Recall, stuff like that. Usually pretty brutal movies with lots of dark humor. His movies are very often a reflection or a portrait of society, especially the media and violence in modern society. And so in RoboCop, there's the scene where they OCP, the company who that makes RoboCop, they have another project, and it's called ED-209, and it's a sort of a rival project for because they're trying to make a cop that is like a machine that they could sell to the army and then to the city to serve as sort of automated police officers. And they have two projects, a RoboCop project, and they have a rival in the company, rival of the guy who made a RoboCop. He has another project, ED-209, and it's this big creature on two legs, and it looks a bit like a crossover between a a giant frog and a Star Wars AT-AT, something like this. And it looks a bit silly, but it's cool. And anyway, they have this meeting, and then the project lead, he's the vice president of the company, and he's like, well, that's my time, that's my moment. I'm gonna make the awesome demo of ED209, and it's gonna be so spectacular. My boss is gonna, he's gonna cancel the RoboCop project, and mine will be like super awesome, and they'll sell it for millions. And so they come in, and they have the whole all the guys in the lab coats and the scientists, and they set up the machine. It's a big thing. It's really big. It's like several tons, and it's the big meeting room with the giant table in the center, and everyone's like, waiting in anticipation. And then the guy goes like, I need a volunteer, for the demonstration. So they one of the guys like, yeah, sure, one of the office guys says, I'll do it. So they gave him a gun, and they say, okay, point it towards the robot. And then he does, and then ED209, he sees the weapon, and then he kind of like growls and moves forward kind of in a menacing way. And then it was like, ooh, awesome. And then the ED209 has this robotic voice, and he say, drop the gun, you have 30 seconds to comply, or something like this. And so everyone's like, wow, awesome. And so the guy is, he's very intimidated. He throws the gun on the floor, and then ED209 keeps going, and he's like, you have 20 seconds to comply. And then they realize that the robot is screwed up, and didn't realize that the guy hasn't the weapon anymore, and he's not a menace. And so he's gonna fire on this poor guy. So everyone's like panic, lab coats to try to stop the thing. Is the monster. They screams and stuff like that. And then finally they can't make it work, and poor guy get blasted, by this machine, this horrible thing. And if you imagine, if you've seen the scene, it's like those two giant 50 cal machine gun spreading hundreds of bullets into the guy, and he gets blasted all across a model of the city that they have, and it's all bloody and it's horrible. And when the original scene, they had it was way more violent actually. They had the ED209 firing on the guy, and then the guy would be thrown onto the table, and then ED209 would walk towards him, and then prop just above him, and then aim, and then fire again for like 2 minutes nonstop, until basically there's nothing left of the guy but a pulp. There's no model, there's no guy. You can make the difference between guy and anything. It's like absolute carnage, and that was the scene. And then at the very end, then it stops and silence, and then you hear someone saying, call an ambulance, which of course is hilarious because there's just nothing left of that guy. So it's completely pointless to call an ambulance. It's a really fun scene, and it's really intended to be seen this way, and it's so ridiculously, outrageously brutal and violent, and that combined with this line, it makes the perfect scene. And it's actually not so scary anymore. It's just, it becomes really dark comedy at that point. But anyway, the MPA, they didn't think that. They didn't understand the joke, so they saw the thing, and they were like, well, you can't have the robot firing for 2 minutes on the remains of a body. Is just too violent. You can't do that. If you do this, you're gonna get an R rating, or even an X rating or something. And Paul Verhoeven, he was really mad about it. He wouldn't change it, and eventually his producer told him, well, you have to, because otherwise we won't get the rating, and it's gonna screw up the movie. So he changed the scene, and that's the scene that you see. The shortened scene is the one that is in the movie that was released. And in that case, when you hear "call an ambulance," that line has completely lost its power. It's not funny anymore because it's more of a normal shootout, and the guy is still, he's still in one piece more or less on the table, and he could still technically be alive. I mean, maybe, probably not, but it's not really a fun scene anymore. It completely destroyed the whole dark comedy of it. And doing so, it makes the scene actually more vicious and violent than it was intended to be. So I think it's interesting that in trying to remove the graphic violence, the censorship actually probably made it worse. Pretty interesting. And Paul Verhoeven often talks about that thing. It's really, I think it really remembers it as something that was a big mistake. He got in a ton of trouble in Hollywood because he was a bit crazy, didn't care, so he wanted to do the movies, his own way, and got in a lot of trouble, and then eventually he left Hollywood altogether. He's not doing any movies in the U.S. anymore. He went back to Europe. His latest film was actually produced in France, because he couldn't take the the whole the politics of Hollywood and the way things work there, and the money. He thought that the money was getting ahead of everything, and there was not enough freedom for directors to do good movies. But anyway, actually Steven Soderbergh too, really good director. I love this guy. He's done all the Ocean 11, Ocean 12 movie. He did what else? That show, The Nick, really awesome show about hospital at the turn of the century in New York. Super awesome show. And Steven Soderbergh, a few years ago, I think he went back to it, but he said, "I'll never make any more movies with Hollywood, because making a movie in Hollywood is like being a chef and having someone fought in the kitchen." So yeah, he wasn't too happy about his experiences. I think it's something that a lot of commercial artists, so to speak, struggle with. We have to make the money, we have to make that dough, but very often we end up in situations where our convictions have to be a little trampled by the demands of the market and all that stuff, realities. I still haven't decided if I want to actually show. Well, for him, I need to suggest a mask anyway. But I'm still undecided as to whether I show actual facial features or if I leave them faceless. I can't decide for some reason. I feel like on it's a really weird thing. I haven't been able to really figure what happens there, but I feel like on some characters it's okay to have the face, and on some others it just looks weird. And generally, most of them they don't have a face, so I'm tempted not to have ever a face. But I wonder if it's weird. I wonder if, what do you guys think? Is it weird not to have a face? I wonder. I wonder if people are gonna think like, why are they all like faceless? Strange, you know. But they're so small that when you have the face, often it just looks kind of too prominent and big and a bit silly, you know. It doesn't have the same sort of scale as the rest because it's just too small, and so I don't know. I'd love to be able to decide once and for all, but I don't seem to be able to do it. No, maybe it was better with that small head. No. Like this. I'll go back to this later. I think I need to do something really nice with this first. If I can. See if I can. So for that sort of stuff, I like to do the to show the inside face and put it really dark. If I can. Wait, no, there's nothing behind it. What am I doing? There is something would be underneath, and that's it. There's nothing. It could roll like this, but that's about it. Yeah, I can't do that. Just have a little bit of an edge to it. This would probably, the nut would be around the waistline. Something here. Oh, something else I wanted to say. I try to improve the stream as much as I can, you know, but in terms of the content and you know, the technology and presentation and all that stuff. In terms of presentation, I haven't, like you said, like you've seen, I've barely done anything. I'll try to be better at that, but for now, I really want to focus on streaming first, and making something that hopefully some of you guys want to watch, rather than putting some cool overlays and counters and whatnot. But eventually, something I want to do probably. But one thing that I was reading about is that some people, they mentioned the fact that it's better to host people when you're not when you're offline. And there's a feature in Twitch for this, where you can auto host a bunch of people, and every time they come online, Twitch will host them automatically based on your preferences. So right now I've only put 2 people. One channel's called Peter Draws. This guy called Peter, and he's drawing, so Peter Draws. And I find him really, really interesting. He's an incredible artist. He does everything directly, inks in everything with a rotring, doesn't pencil anything in. It's directly ink on the paper, which is really insane. And he's doing this sort of semi-abstract pop art / comic book drawings that are really wacky and incredibly detailed and weird. But he's got such a fertile imagination, and he really knows his stuff. And on top of that, he has a really nice sense of humor. He's very clever. He often has something interesting to say. His YouTube channel is great too, very cool. He talks about a lot of things. Sometimes he'll tell I'll read Edgar Allan Poe, a story while he's drawing and that sort of stuff. So it's very it's a very good guy. So it's possible that sometimes if you check on my my channel, you'll actually see him instead. And then another guy, Adam versus Everything, he's streaming games, and I don't plan to host a lot of people streaming games, because it's not necessarily what I'm the most interested in. But and I want to host stuff that you guys would find interesting, more so than me, because you're here to watch pixel art, so I assume that you're interested in art. So maybe you want me to host people that do art and or something like this. But I don't really know. So if you guys see stuff that you like, that I host, and by all means, go and support them, and tell me if you like them. If you don't, then I'll try to find other people to host. I don't know what to do with this thing. Okay. I'm gonna keep this way. And also now I record every stream, so you'll be able to watch them up to 60 days if you miss them. And I think one of the things that I would probably want to do, but it's going to take some time, so I don't want to spend too much time in doing other things. But I was thinking that maybe I'll open a YouTube channel, and then every stream I'll re-edit every stream in a condensed fast playing version, you know, so you see the entire thing at, I don't know, 8 times the speed, and you see uh, the entire creation of a sprite or something like this in you know 15 minutes or something like this. But I'll have to do another extra commentary on top, because obviously I can't speed up the sound. So it takes quite a bit of editing work, but maybe it's worth it. I don't know. I'm not sure about all this. Also, if you guys have ideas for characters, I have a list of characters that I want to make. It's a pretty big list, but I'm sure you probably have characters that you like and like me to do. So if that's the case, then you can write them in the chat, and I'll write them down, and maybe I'll try to get to it when when I have a bit of time, maybe for a next stream. If I'm not too inspired and I can't really decide of someone, then I'll have something, you know. I'm gonna change the saturation for the mask. Let me just try something real quick. Should I go this way? No, probably not. maybe, yeah, I think I could move that leg a bit. Seems more, is more dynamic this way. He looks more stable, more like stronger on his legs. Yeah, I think we could do that. Something that normally I should have done for this is actually paint the character underneath to make sure that you know, legs and stuff make sense, because sometimes it's hard to imagine how legs would be when you don't really see the waistline and hips and, you know, pelvis area. I was lazy, and I think I'm kind of paying it now, but it's fine. I think I'll be able to make it work more or less. Let's try something a bit crazy, just real quick. And here there's a belt somewhere. And then oh, and choose a blue. See, it's the same technique that I used last time. If I want dark blue pants, I'm just gonna find the blue first, crank the saturation in the lightness, and then once I know that I have the right hue, I'll just bring down saturation slowly and the lightness. Actually, you know, here in a case like this, I need to do colorize first. Yeah, and now we'll go, so hue around here, and saturation goes down, and then lightness goes down. It's tricky there because I want it dark, but not dark to the point where it's black, you know. And the reason is I would like to be able to still shadow the leg here with the you know, to re-emphasize the fact that there's a distance, there's a space between the leg and the apron. So something like this. And then also if I make a belt, then you can see a little bit of that belt. I wonder if his shirt should be tucked down, you know, maybe just a bit. Maybe. And really, this is all this stuff is always just to give it a bit more life, you know. Every opportunity that I have to try and convey something a bit interesting, I'll try and do it, because otherwise you just have big empty shapes, right? So this could be belly. Like this. I really wanted to try and get him to look a little fat. It's not easy, because at this size, any pixel will make it will change drastically the look. You want to start that curve there pretty early for the apron. Like you have a nice curve there. Yeah. Oop. Yeah, I think maybe I covered him a bit too much, though. Uncovered him. I can need a bit more of that. Let's try and start fixing a bit legs and stuff now. Make them a bit better. Actually, that was terrible. It's like I don't mind. It's alright. Always struggle with legs. Legs are very difficult for me. Really not good at that. Mm. Mm-hmm. Still not happy with this area. It's a bit better. I think this leg is alright. I also kind of like the sort of arched legs a little bit because it makes him look a little weird. So there's something that I like in there, but I struggle to make it look right and still keep that sort of. I want the pose to look a little weird because he's doing all these very bizarre, jerky motions when he's in that last scene. He's very crazy. The way he moves is quite strange. You can tell that he's a madman, you know. But at the same time, this is hard to convey on just one image, you know. If I could animate, then it would be easier. But in that case, I have to make something that that gives you this sort of impression, but not without being able to animate it or showing it really. It's like it's just a moment, you know. Mm. So there would be some sort of bend somewhere here, right? Maybe I'll just do just a little edge here, just about. We can do. I think that think I'm gonna leave this like this. I'll just try something real quick. Sometimes I'll use the skew like this just to, you know, just for fun, just to kind of mess up a little bit the character and see if there's something that could transpire. Of course, this is bad because now a resample will mess it up, but it's just to see if you should do this. No, I feel like he's too tilted, but to get him a little more straight, might be a little tricky. At the same time, I like that he's kind of like, he's leaning forward, you know, on the right. Makes him a little bit more dynamic. This is okay. Probably do some kind of outline. Maybe like this. Barely visible. Again, see, the less visible, the smaller the this will look. And I want it to look really small because otherwise it messes up the scale of this thing. Where's this shape? In fact, okay, yeah, I know something. I think, oh, this needs to go up, because when you look at this, the way it's actually it's actually quite high. So I think I need to have this pretty high. Oh, and also, it's actually attached in the back, so I can't really do this. It has to here to do something like this. There's a pinch there, right? And then here I can go boom. Yeah, that's kind of cool. This. Yeah, that could work. A little more him. That okay, that that tie, because I've messed up the size of him so many times that the tie now doesn't work at all. So I'm just gonna fix this real quick. Like that. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I would like to. See if I can change this a bit. Oops. Yeah, I think it's not too bad overall. Always a good. It's always a good idea, to just check a little bit. You see, I like this. See the silhouette. I think kind of conveys what I was talking about. It looks a little stocky, and it's got the bent legs, and the head seems to be tucked in the body. So he's got this little weird, a bit goofy appearance. So I think that's not too bad, because it's more or less what I was looking for. Yeah, yeah. Oh, so now, okay, this is a very important one. Gauze, white background. Ugh. So now we have to make sure that you'll still read. White background. We'll probably have to change a bunch of things, but that's okay. that. I think for him, um, I don't know if I want too much saturation on the skin for him. For some reason, it seems a little seems wrong. So skin tones, it's interesting because for every character, it's almost I mean, they're in the ballpark, but I almost have a different skin tone for every character, because depending on what kind of clothes they wear, especially for the clothes, sometimes I want the skin to read. It reads differently, and sometimes it reads a little wrong, and so that's why I need to adjust the skin tones for every character. Like Jack Torrance from The Shining, he's very desat. His skin is the most desat of all the characters that I've made. She's the most saturated because she has the red hair, and the red is so saturated that by comparison, her skin looked always a little dead, and she needs to look anything but dead. She's this fierce warrior, always in the sun, you know. So that's why. So see, for him, it looks better with the less saturation. I'll go a little darker too. See, that's way better for him. Now I'll just do a little bit of a level thing. Add the contrast. Just crank the contrast a bit. Not too much. There you go. Just gonna add blood real quick, and then I think I'll probably call it for now. It's been a little over 3 hours actually, so I streamed longer tonight, but had fun doing this guy, and he's not an easy one, strangely. I think he's got a bunch of things that are interesting and not easy to convey. I like the fact that the blood goes really dark there. It's really nice. A little more saturated. Okay, well, I mean, I think he's slowly getting there, and it shouldn't be too long to wrap him up. I still really want to make sure this is all right. I'm not still something that I don't quite like with the arms. They're a bit too symmetrical. I think I need to make this more dynamic and less mirrored. So I'll probably work at that next time. I like the head, looks weird, and I think it needs to look weird with the hair, the messy hair, and the suggestion of a weird face. So that's cool. I like the tie. I think this works more or less now. It's just arms that I'm not super fan of. I may even try a different pose. You know, maybe maybe I'll have the maybe this arm will go this way, and then maybe, or maybe the chainsaw will go a little more straight on top of his head, so that then the arms, they're quite different. I'll see. We'll see about that. We'll figure it out next time. Okay, guys. I think I'm gonna wrap it up now. I hope you you were a little bit entertained. That you like the stories. I'll always try to tell you about the stories that I've heard in film or game or whatnot, and then I hope you like the character. It's not done. If you feel like things, you see things that are, you're thinking like, for like the last half hour you've been screaming at your screen, but don't you see this, do that, and it will be great, then put it in the chat, please. um, if not, then I hope you like it, but definitely don't be shy. I want this to be the best that I can, so so sometimes you may see something that I don't, and that is really obvious, and then will make it look a lot better. Hopefully. So that's gonna be that for now. I think I'll come back on. I'm tempted to say Thursday and try every 2 day, but I feel like maybe it's gonna be a little too ambitious in the beginning with work and all of that. I'm still gonna keep 2 days in between each stream for now. At least I streamed longer this time. Almost 3.5 hours. So that's pretty cool. Hopefully it's not too long for you guys. Maybe half of you are asleep, which is fine, but you'll be able to catch that up tomorrow. So let's say we'll be back on 2 days, 3 days from now. So Friday, how about that? It's Tuesday. Yeah, Friday. I'll post on Instagram as usual, and on Reddit probably, and I'll put a little counter here on the Twitch channel so you'll know. So let's say Friday at 9 p.m. Pacific time. You guys have a good one. Thanks everyone for being there. Like I said, whether it is one person or 1,000 or 10,000, I'm still super stoked that there's some people who want to see me work. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.